It started when I was on my yoga mat. It was early one morning last spring. I hadn't been sleeping well, and I was up as the sun was rising, moving through familiar yoga asanas, gently stretching, moving, breathing. I came into child's pose, curled over bent knees, forehead resting on the mat, when the crying began. Everything that my body had been holding in was let loose in a torrent of tears, growing into deep sobs. Worry, grief, fear, sadness, loneliness, and anger pouring out. My heart ached, thinking of all of those who were suffering alone or separated from anyone who was familiar. On the day we were born and received the gift of our first breath, we depended on our mothers, our parents, or other caring adults in order to survive. As we grew, those needs changed, but our need to be loved and cared for is still part of us. That morning on my yoga mat, I rocked and cried, feeling the vulnerability of being human. We need one another. This may be our vulnerability and our strength.
This past year has been one of developing my identity as a mother. My child was born 51 weeks ago today, and it has been a long time since I've needed mothering as much as I have needed it since becoming a mother. It turns out that the capacity to give my child what he needs is dependent on me having enough of my needs met. And quite often, I can't fulfill both sets of needs on my own. So I'm dependent on others to hold me up so I can hold him up. I was raised upper middle class, though, and I'm white. And I have internalized the message that self-sufficiency is good. And that means I'm really bad at asking for help. But that hasn't made me need it any less. And the pandemic has complicated everything. When I needed help the most, it felt the least safe to receive it. When I hit the end of my capacity and could go no further. When tears filled my eyes and I simply could not do what I needed to do. When without love and comfort and support, I could no longer offer love and comfort and support. Well, I have spent this year learning that I need to be mothered well in order to mother well. And for me, at least, this applies to both parenting and pastoring. Because to offer love and comfort to my congregation also requires that I have something to give. And that means I have to reach out when I need love and comfort for that part of my being too. Support can come in a wider range of formats than I ever knew. There was actually for me one day when everything I needed to do most profoundly exceeded my capacity to do it. Before that day, things were easier. After that day, things were easier. But on that one day, I could go no further. I remember texting 3 friends. It was August and nothing felt safe, particularly not in person. but one of my friends got in the car to come help. And another stayed on the phone with me until she arrived. The third texted back and forth all day, assuring me that I was allowed to make things easier on myself, and it didn't mean I was failing as a mother to do so. Those three friends comforted me that day. They let their love for me become support when I needed it most. And I think it's more than fair to say that they mothered me. And because they took care of me, I was able to take care of my child. In some ways, this story seems too small. And in some ways, it seems almost archetypal. Looking back on my life, there are innumerable times when my pain or burden was too much to bear. And in every one of them, I reached out for support. Sometimes I reached out directly to the divine, which for me means I disappeared into nature and silence for the hours I needed before I could form words again. Other times I've reached out to family or friends or my own pastor and let them hold me up. It is in being held in any medium that I can regain my own self-regulation and find my way again.
Isn't it amazing when someone shows up in simple yet deeply caring ways? 21 years ago, I went to stay at my parents' home when my mom was nearing the end of her life. She'd been diagnosed with cancer just 5 weeks earlier. She was at home with hospice care, laying in a bed where she could look out to see her garden. And my father and sisters and I were caring for her and for one another. A longtime friend called and asked if she could come by. She arrived with 3 hot fudge brownie sundaes, one for me, one for her, and one for Dad. Let's go for a walk, she suggested. We walked and ate. She listened. And we cried and laughed together and also held space for the comfort of shared silence. That was the most delicious sundae I have ever eaten. Each of these moments in our lives have served to remind us that we are not self-sufficient. We do not walk or move or work alone. It is because of our connections that we are. It is because we have been nurtured that we are able to function and to offer nurture.
Our sweet baby is teething. It is miserable for everyone involved. And we are very thankful in our house for pain medication. But sometimes it isn't enough. Sometimes he hurts and nothing we can do makes the hurt go away. And it's awful. In those moments, all we can do is be with him and assure him that he is not alone, and it doesn't feel like enough in the moment. But I wouldn't dream of letting him suffer alone. There are many sources of pain in life: physical, spiritual, mental, and emotional. In some cases, we are able to do things that change them, like feeding people who are hungry. In many cases, we cannot change reality or the pain people experience, especially when they're grieving. In those cases, all we can do is be with one another and assure each other we are not alone. And it doesn't feel like enough. But the difference between being alone and being supported is significant. Our congregations can be communities of practice where we continue to learn about giving and receiving care. This has been one of the worst parts of the pandemic, that the means of support and comfort we are used to offering grieving people have been taken away. And I invite those who are safely ready and able to loosen their COVID restrictions to think about how to offer love and support now that wasn't possible before. Learning the limits of what comfort I can give has never felt enjoyable. But it seems like the capacity to be a mother grows along with my awareness of my own limitations. The gospel lesson we read today in the United Methodist Church instructs us to abide in love and expounds eloquently on the subject. I believe this is what faith is all about. In Christian and United Methodist lingo, we talk about sanctification, which is the process of letting go of whatever is not love and being filled up with love so that you can respond to every person in every moment with pure love. In our models, continued faith development is all aimed at sanctification. John Wesley, the founder of the Methodist movement, believed that people could reach perfection in love during their lifetimes. And I share that as an interesting historical fact. In real life, things are complicated. In many circumstances, it is not clear what the most loving response actually is. What looks from one angle like loving nurture looks from another angle like enabling. These days, I find myself reminding myself several times a day about the process of emerging from cocoons. That is, when transformed creatures emerge from cocoons, it is a slow and seemingly painful process. Over the years, many well-meaning humans have tried to ease creatures' ways out of the cocoon, only to learn that moths and butterflies are permanently damaged by having the process eased. There is a fine line to walk in care for others, and I find I am never clear which side of it I am on.
Indeed. Receiving care can also be complicated. Sometimes we just need someone to help us or for someone to comfort us. But if we don't ask, then no one will know. And sometimes we can end up just feeling resentful. Or maybe we don't know who to ask, or we tell ourselves we don't deserve it, or that someone else needs it more. And sometimes it's so hard to just allow ourselves to be cared for, to really receive the love that is being offered. Prior to seminary, I worked in childcare for 20 years. Over those years, and while raising our daughter, I have held and rocked many a tired, cranky little one. And right now, our little dog is scratching at the door. So here I am.
Helpful of Luna to be such a good example.
There we are, asking just for what she needs. Please let me in.
Mm-hmm.
And whether you have done so yourself or not, I invite you to imagine holding an overly tired toddler who is crying and pushing away, resisting their need for sleep with every ounce of energy that they have. They are so tired and so upset, not wanting to give up on this day, to let go, and to just sink into the arms that are holding them. Unitarian Universalism affirms that each of us is worthy of love, that we are each more than our worst mistake, that we are worthy of care and comfort, that we are held by a larger love that will not let us go, even when we struggle, even when we push away. I can imagine the holy whispering, shh, shh, I'm right here.
Mm.
It's okay. Shh.
I am deeply aware that while the divine, faith, and biblical teaching all call us to love, in our society, the expectations around that love vary according to the bodies we occupy. Lynn and I have been reflecting on the human need to receive mothering, the human need to receive love and comfort. And we are suggesting that faith communities can be sources of practicing and giving good care so that those in them can then give good care to the world. Yet, I keep thinking about the realities of emotional labor and the ways that female embodied people and people of color, along with others in our society thought to occupy subordinate positions, are subliminally taught to offer care and nurture to those who are male embodied, white, and empowered, who are taught to expect it. Kate Mann in Down Girl, The Logic of Misogyny, talks about the ways emotional labor is thought to be the work of some to give and the privilege of others to receive, and how all of this is encouraged with carrots and enforced with sticks. This awareness brings some of the deeper challenges of celebrating love and comfort into view. Humans need love and comfort. Humans are blessed to be able to give love and comfort. But often the giving becomes the role of some and the receiving the role of others. I believe that one of the subversive narratives of faith is inverting those roles and making the giving of love, comfort, and nurture the role of all people, especially the ones in power. So, dear ones, may we receive the wonderful mothering of the divine and of the people of faith. And may we soak in love and comfort so that we are able to share it with abundance.
Amen.